Greetings again. This is video 3B in the Rediscovering Peace series. It was important for me to keep the videos at around 20 minutes max a piece. Ideally they'd be 10 to 12, and I experimented and did many takes yesterday for many hours, and as you can tell already in this video, I'm just a little long-winded. I like chatting, and getting this pretty dense material out, even in segments in under 12 minutes pop, is just not going to be, it's just not happening. But 20 is reasonable, so to make that happen, the last video, or this third video, I cut it into 2 portions, okay? And the last video was called The Basics, and it dealt with the material on page 5 in the workbook. I forgot to mention that. This series of videos is based on this workbook, minus the coffee stains. This is my 4-year-old version, so these are the coffee stains and tea stains that have developed over the years. This is online for perusal and or download. If you go to www.inspiringthealtruisticmoment.com, I know that's a mouthful. I've got the link in the description box. You click on the writings page in the navigation bar at the top. Takes you right to all the books that I've published so far on my website. This is one of them. You'll see this cover. Click on it to read it online, or you can download it in a PDF form and have your own personal copy for free. Okay? But this workbook accompanies this presentation. So the last video, video 3A, dealt with page 5 of the workbook. We're going to talk a little bit more about page 5 to start here, and then move on to a little later portions of the workbook. Essentially, video 3A, and now 3B, is providing the foundwork, the foundation upon which we're going to build for the next few videos. And I always like to keep things simple, and then keep returning to the simple, because what's going to happen is, over the course of this series of videos, there's going to be a lot of material presented, and it's going to go into places where you haven't learned anything before. It's going to redefine some terms in very challenging ways. It's going to be a lot of material. It has to be a lot of material, and it has to be relatively dense, not because the truth I'm sharing is difficult. It's exceptionally simple. It's very easy. It's all one sentence, which I'm going to get to by the end of this video. And yet, we have to have a series of videos and symbols and diagrams and redefinitions and discussions, because what we're doing with this series of videos essentially is unlearning. We are unlearning all of the, dare I say, crap that's been shoved into our heads, not only from our society and our well-intended parents and our well-intended pastors and our probably not so well-intended politicians, and even our own genetic programming, our evolutionary programming, the way our reptile brain, our primitive brain functions. That's also feeding us this constant line of non-effective, strife and suffering producing garbage. And we have to peel all that away to get to this glowing, simple truth within it that can then be applied in your lives, every day of your lives, for the rest of your lives, if you wish. So, this is the second half of video 3, which is just about presenting it in its simple form, breaking it right down. So, to continue onward, the last video we dispelled the illusions. We pointed out what this video series is not about. Now this one focuses a little more concisely on what it is about, and it's pretty much about this. Every minute of your life, you have a choice to make. Independent of all the choices you've made previously, independent of who you have chosen to be, independent of who you think you are, independent of who you might be in the future and what you might choose tomorrow, in every moment of your life, you have a choice. And that choice is between fear and love. That's it. You can all go home now. Presentation's over, but essentially this is it, all right? This is what you've got to deal with. You can break down every moment of your life and everything you ever choose to do or not do into this parameter: fear or love. You do things out of fear, even well-intended things. You do them for yourself. Or you do them for yourself that you will then someday do something for others. Or you do them for yourself because otherwise you'll be harmed. Or reasonable choices. Many times they seem very reasonable. I'm not trying to say they're unreasonable or wrong choices. There's no wrong or right in Scought's world. This is just a choice you have between a disempowered life that's reasonable and safe and an empowered life that can blow the roof off and give you a peace of which you haven't even been able to dream yet. Okay? But you cannot live a fully empowered life while making even reasonable decisions based on your self-interest, based on caring for yourself or your loved ones or those who might benefit you or reciprocate for you. Right? We have to transcend the suffering, we have to shift our life, or at least the present moment of our life. It's one moment at a time. At least this moment, we have to say, okay, yes, I could make a bunch of reasonable, self-focused choices now, but instead I choose to care for him, her, it, he, she. Yeah? I choose to sacrifice joyfully what I have in this moment for the betterment of another, for the peace of another, for the joy of another, to bring harmony to strife, right? To bring a smile to a frown, right? This is it. Every moment of your life, you have this choice. Now, the trouble with it is, and what this next couple of videos is going to show, we convince ourselves often that we're living here. Oh, I love all the time. I'm a loving guy. I'm a nice guy. I do nice things all the time. What we're going to discover is, even though we do all do nice things regularly, even though we do actually love other people, if we're going to be really humbly honest with ourselves, the vast majority of the time, almost all of the time, there is a motive behind those nice, friendly, responsible, loving behaviors that is self-focused, or striving, at least subconsciously, or indirectly at least, for benefit for self. Right? Fear-based on the mid to long term, if not the immediate term. Right? We're going to get more into that in the future. It's going to go pretty in-depth on that in video number 6. All right? But throughout the video series, we're going to return to this concept, okay? Fear versus love. And you're going to realize more and more, the more honest you are with yourself, and this is not a bad thing. This is the way you're built. You are built to sin, which is Greek for miss the mark. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or a sinner or damned to hell. Sin means I've missed the mark. I have not chosen to be my true self. I have chosen to succumb to fear. And we're all built to sin. The reptile brain, in every second of your life, is working a quarter of a second faster in fight or flight mode than your neocortex, which is what you need to choose to love anyway, to be kind anyway, to give anyway, right? To be grateful anyway, yeah? And if you're not conscious of this dynamic, this actual, real biophysiological challenge that every human brain has in every second of its existence, if you're not aware of this, you can't pause long enough to actually choose real love, real selfless, kind, noble action, which is the only doorway I've ever discovered that will lead to profound bliss, to profound peace and profound meaning. Yeah? So that's the start. There's always this beneath and hovering above everything we talk about. It all gets down to this. This moment and this moment alone, am I doing this for me, or am I just doing this to help another? That's it. That's it. And in the moments when it's most difficult to choose this, it's most powerful when you do, and you experience most profoundly what I'm talking about. Hence the wisdom of love your enemy, but again, we'll get into that in a bit. So, fear. Let's talk about fear, right? Fear. And this is also this is the bottom of page 5 still in the handout, if you've got the handout and are following along. We do have some basic fears, right? We have a fear of meaninglessness, which is what I've been talking about throughout this video series, actually, right? And so the solution to that, of course, is finding purpose. And we have a fear of loneliness, right? Of being alone. We're herd animals by nature. We want to have interactions with others. We want to have like minds and like thinking and supportive people around us. We want a circle of friends and companions we can trust. We want to find true love and partnership that's healthy, right? We have a fear of loneliness for the most part. Some people do well alone. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying that part of the basic programming is we are a social species, right? We have a fear of loneliness, and so what we want to do is experience love. Or maybe we could even say community. Right? We have a fear of death, mortality. Tied to that is, of course, change, right? We are afraid of the unknown, which is why we continually, all of us to a degree, repeat the same dysfunctional behaviors and relationships over and over and over again, not because we think they're great, but because we at the least know we've done them before and we've survived them. We're still alive. So yeah, they're causing us suffering, but hey, better this than the unknown. Better this than something that might kill me, right? And so we need to get to the point to transcend that fear. We have to accept change. And implied in that is, of course, accepting mortality, right? Regardless of what you believe about the afterlife, this life and your conscious identity in this body is going to end. That's just a fact, all right? We can talk at length, uselessly, about whether or not the consciousness that is Scaughdt lives past this body and identifies still as Scaughdt, even though this body is gone. And for the time this body is alive, it's only going to be alive once. If I'm lucky for about 80, 85, who knows, maybe 100 years, but that's it, in all likelihood, okay? And really what we need to be focusing on is accepting that mortality and focusing on this lifetime and what I can do with this body before it perishes, right? And that's one great way we can transcend fear and choose love. And the last fear we have is, of course, the pain-pleasure. We have a fear of pain, discomfort, dis-ease, right? So we desire pleasure, we desire abundance, we desire comfort, right? So we have to replace desires, right? Replacing our desires, okay? And I did not put releasing our desires because, which I originally put on this chart, because you're not going to release your desires. Your brain is programmed to desire. In fact, if you stop desiring innately, it means your brain is broken. Yeah? As long as you are breathing, this part of your brain, the primitive part, the non-conscious, automated part of your brain, your instinctual drives, is programmed to survive and to desire things that it feels enables you to survive, which are inherently things that are pleasurable, right? So the desire is going to continue. It's what you do with the desire. And if you can, in the moments when you most desire for self, choose to love anyway, is when you most powerfully experience this bliss of which I speak. Okay? So, very briefly, for those of you who out there who are Christians or know anything about the Bible, I come from a Judeo-Christian background. I am not a Christian per se. I don't follow or worship the teachings of Paul in the Bible. I emulate or try to emulate the teachings of Jesus, and the two are, as I've written about extensively, in direct opposition to one another. The teachings of Jesus and the way of Christ is actually, the Christian church actually opposes those teachings for the most part. If you want to dabble in this and you're interested, you go to the writings page again on my website, linked below, and there's a whole section called Proto-Christian Writings, and you can just look at any one of those that I've already published. Really fascinating stuff on what the church is not telling us and the Christian religion is not telling us about what's in the Bible. And yet, One thing that is in the Bible that's insightful regardless of your religion, that makes this really simple again, and explains the simplest way to transcend these fears, right, and move to love, is what Jesus says about how to get to heaven, right? He says, well, maybe I think I got enough pages. Right, he says, to get to heaven, right, you have to love, losing this pen here, love your neighbor as yourself. Jeez, I need a bigger board, but you can read that. Get to heaven, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, what the Christian church teaches you, and what your ego teaches you, and what you've been traditionally, regardless of your religion or cultural background, been taught to believe is, heaven is where you go after you're dead. It's a beautiful place of peace and loveliness after you're dead. That's the traditional view of heaven. And you have to earn your way in. This is not just Christianity. This is a number of religions. They may call heaven something differently, but many people the world over believe that to get to paradise or heaven after you die, you have to be nice and have warm, fuzzy feelings for, right? Emotional and intellectual feelings of goodness is love for your friends, family members, or clan members, people who believe like you do, religiously or politically, etc., etc. Yeah? And you have to treat them like you wish to be treated. Golden rule. Okay? That's the standard recipe for salvation, yeah? And of course, if we look at what that's led to over the years, the application of that self-focused caring for those of like mind in order to get rewarded has led to, of course, strife, sadness, despair, war, destruction, and massive suffering. That's just the fruit of that tree. And that's 20, 30,000 years of human history, at the least, show that to be true. Yeah. Fortunately, if you look at the Bible, what Jesus says, he defines these terms. Most times, only once. Yeah? And he defines them differently. Heaven is, for Jesus, in Luke 17, verse 20 and 21. Luke 17, 20, 21 is the only time he specifically talks about heaven in non-parable fashion. And he says, it's right now. You're in heaven now, if you're willing to act appropriately. So, all of a sudden, bliss now comes from love, which is, for Jesus, John 13, verses 15 to 17 is the most poignant, really potent example, but all of his parables say the same thing. If you really read them with these lenses on, you'll see that his entire ministry was about, you have to do for others. It's a verb. Love is a verb. Caring actively. Love. For who? The neighbor. Jesus defines neighbor one time in the Bible. Once. That's Luke chapter 10, verses 29 to 37, the parable of the Good Samaritan. The hero of the story is the Samaritan, who was an enemy, a member of the enemy clan of the Jews. The Jews and the Samaritans did not get along back then. In fact, it was in conservative circles back in the day, Jesus' day, it was forbidden to associate with Samaritans. So the hero, it's significant that the hero of Jesus' parable about goodness and kindness is a Samaritan, right? And it is the one who showed mercy. We can only show mercy to those who have wronged us. Jesus defines neighbor as enemy, our enemies. And then whereas Paul in the Christian church would have you associate the word self with you and what you would want, the golden rule, Jesus reminds us that we too are children of God, that one day, on that day, you will know that I am in the Father is in me, and that we are in you, John 14:20, right? You know, that we are potentially agents of the divine, right? So all of a sudden, everything changes. right? Everything changes. And this fuzzy concept that is easy to apply and therefore extremely non-potent. How simple is Jesus even goes out of his way to say this. What does it mean for you to love those who love you? Even the tax collectors do the same. And tax collectors, as they are today, were not cherished in those days. So, this is just a very selfish concept with a selfish reward based on what we would want. Being kind to people who it's easy to be kind to, it neuters love. This castrates love. But Jesus says, no, real bliss comes in every moment you choose to actively care for your enemy in that moment as though he or she were God. And I've practiced this, and this stuff works, right? Essentially, it all breaks down to one sentence, which you can remember, and then this video is over. Once again, in around 20 minutes. Who would have thought? And that's, be kind when least inclined. That's it. That's it. Be kind when least inclined. Okay? In every moment of your life, when it's most difficult to be kind, when it's most difficult to be grateful, when it's most difficult to show compassion, when it's most difficult to do a good deed, when it's most difficult to give of what you have, and you choose to do anyway, be kind anyway, show compassion anyway, be grateful anyway, right? That is the express lane to what Jesus called the kingdom of God, which is this experience of bliss, which, returning to the point, I have lived. This is not just a neat theory. This is not just a cool way to look at how Jesus defines terms, though it is pretty cool. This works. This is a practical concept. Our brains are built to actualize this and experience this bliss when we have the courage to live this way. And the degree to which you courageously enact this, not to get the bliss, if you do it to get this, you're not doing it for the enemy. You're doing it for yourself. You'll con yourself. I've done this. I'm like, geez, I was just kind to that homeless guy and I didn't feel anything. That's because I wasn't doing it for the homeless guy. I was doing it to get the bliss. But if you actually reach out to someone you're scared of or who has harmed you, and either anonymously or directly extend them kindness, not wanting any reward, being afraid to do so, thinking that you might very well be attacked or further insulted as a result, and you do it anyway, then regardless of how they respond, this peace wells up and overcomes you, and you attain entrance immediately into what can very well be called the kingdom of God, right? Paradise, heaven. Yeah. And as long as you maintain that focus, you remain there. Of course, then your ego kicks in again, and you enter the next moment, and you get the chance to do it again, or not, right? But we're going to talk more about that in the following videos. Okay, but that's breaking it down. That's keeping it real simple. If you get nothing else out of these videos, you can just have this mantra in your head: be kind when least inclined. And the degree to which you actually are being kind, which is solely for the benefit of the other, not for reciprocal benefit for self, you're just doing it for the others, the degree to which you courageously choose to be kind is indeed the degree to which you will experience exactly what I'm talking about, and exactly what I myself have experienced over the last 12 years. Every time I've done so. Every time. Every time. Batting 1,000. It's never failed. It's always succeeded. This is not the truth, but this is a truth that is available to every human being, including you. So, that's it. We've gone up to 25 minutes, but what are you going to do? It is what it is. Video 4 is the next video, which will start getting into the heart of the presentation itself. So I'm excited about that. So, love you guys. Peace, and be well, and see you in the next video. The off button. There it is. Peace.